They say a gilded cage is still a cage. But what happens when the door slams shut on a woman who's carrying the next heir of a millionaire empire? One evening, Vivian Stockbridge stepped onto the marble floors of her husband's palatial mansion, only to be turned away at the gates, pregnant, exhausted, and heartbroken. Little did anyone know within hours her name would blaze across the biggest electronic ticker on Wall Street. A tale of betrayal and triumph awaits. Get ready to witness how a discarded wife transforms heartbreak into the ultimate victory, changing the destiny of an entire family empire forever. Inside the imposing gates of the Stockbridge mansion, the night was unusually quiet. No classical music echoed from hidden speakers. No staff hurried across the polished floors. The grand double doors, always inviting for lavish gatherings, stood shut and cold. Vivian Stockbridge stood in the driveway, a single suitcase at her feet, feeling the chill of the evening. A faint neon glow from the city skyline lit up her face, revealing deep circles under her eyes and the unmistakable flush of pregnancy on her cheeks. She had left for a prenatal checkup that morning, expecting to return and rest. Instead, the moment she stepped out of the hired car, she found the mansion's security detail waiting. Heavy-shouldered men in crisp black suits had approached her. They were stoic, arms crossed as one quietly informed her, "Mrs. Stockbridge, we're under instructions. You cannot enter the premises." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She'd never imagined this day would come where she, the so-called queen of the Stockbridge empire, would be banished. Her gaze flicked to the enormous iron gates, usually parted wide, for her now locked like an impenetrable fortress. That fortress belonged to her husband, Ryan Stockbridge, the same man who had once called her his greatest love story. The guards shifted uncomfortably, recognizing her predicament. They all knew she was carrying Ryan's child, the next Stockbridge heir. But the chain of command was unbreakable, and Ryan's orders were law. Vivian tried to swallow her shock and keep her composure. It wasn't just about her dignity. It was about the tiny life growing inside her. She couldn't afford to collapse. Her phone buzzed, and she fumbled to retrieve it from her coat pocket. A single text message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Leave quietly. Don't make a scene. This is Ryan's final word." Vivian bit down on her lip, fighting back tears. She had to think fast. She could beg, but she refused. She could demand, but that might jeopardize her child's future. Instead, she took a deep breath, gave the guards a polite nod, and whispered, "Tell him. Tell him I understand." With trembling hands, she turned away and walked slowly down the driveway, her suitcase wheels clattering on the cobblestone. Behind her, the guards shut the gates, the clang echoing through the night like a judge's gavel. A swirling mixture of heartbreak and betrayal consumed Vivian. How had it come to this point? She reached into her coat again, this time pulling out a small, folded ultrasound picture. In it was the first image of her baby, the child she believed would bring unity to the Stockbridge family. Instead, she felt like an outcast, with nowhere to go but forward. Even then, Vivian couldn't have predicted that by morning the Stockbridge name would be overshadowed by hers, on the front page of every financial newspaper in America. Ryan Stockbridge was a formidable figure in the world of finance. Born into unimaginable wealth, he had multiplied his family's fortune through risky takeovers, bold acquisitions, and an uncanny knack for reading the market. His father, Harvey Stockbridge, had once rubbed elbows with the likes of Warren Buffett and the late Steve Jobs, investing in Apple before it became a tech titan. Ryan grew up in the world of Forbes billionaires' elite clubs and annual galas at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But behind the glossy magazine covers and philanthropic appearances, the Stockbridge home was a pressure cooker. Ever since Ryan's mother, Celeste, passed away, the mansion had been run under the watchful eye of Ryan's father. Harvey Stockbridge could be a man of warmth in public, donating generously to children's hospitals, but in private he was ruthless. He regarded women with suspicion, convinced that they were all gold diggers eyeing the family fortune. When Ryan first introduced Vivian, an ambitious law school graduate with modest means, Harvey's disapproval was immediate and unrelenting. Harvey often questioned Vivian's motives. "What do you want with my son?" he would sneer. Even after their marriage, he continued to intimidate her constantly, testing whether she'd break under the weight of family expectations. Over time, Ryan, initially her protector and champion, began to change. Business dealings, fatherly pressure, and the swirling chaos of managing an empire eroded the tenderness he once had. The world Ryan knew whispered into his ear, a wealthy man was always at risk of being used, of being weakened by emotional ties. Vivian had weathered it all, the condescending maids who were loyal to Harvey, the board members, who subtly reminded her she didn't have a proper pedigree, and her own husband's gradual withdrawal into secrecy. Yet she never imagined he'd banish her like a stranger. In one moment, the illusions of safety, belonging, and unconditional love shattered. At a luxury penthouse across the city, Ryan sat in a dimly lit study, swirling whiskey in a crystal tumbler. His father, Harvey, stood at the window looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The tension between them was palpable. "You did the right thing," son Harvey said in a gravelly voice. "I've seen her emails. She's been meeting with certain lawyers, and I have reason to believe she's planning to use that child as leverage." Ryan slammed the glass on the table, his frustration boiling over. "Enough, Dad. We've talked about this. Vivian is my wife. She's not after my money. I gave the order for her to stay away because I just needed time to think, not because I believe she's a gold digger." Harvey's lips tightened. "If you believe that, why did you order her away? You and I both know women have done worse, even forging paternity claims for a fraction of our fortune. With a child in the picture, if things go south, it'll cost you billions." Ryan felt a wave of nausea. Everything was about money, influence, brand image. For a moment, he questioned his own sanity. Why had he signed those documents? Why had he called security? Yet a dull ache in his chest reminded him that something had broken between him and Vivian. Maybe it was the argument they had that morning, Vivian's unwavering stance on investing her personal savings into a risky biotech startup. It didn't sound malicious or cunning. It was typical of her entrepreneurial spirit. But with Harvey fanning the flames, suspicion grew. Ryan had found messages in her phone referencing corporate expansions, confidentiality agreements with an unfamiliar finance firm, and clandestine lunches. All of it suggested secrets, collusions, maybe even betrayal. And so he'd erupted, demanding she leave until he could figure out the truth. It was the biggest decision of his life, and one he was already regretting. But regrets had no place in the Stockbridge empire. Harvey turned to face his son, his gaze icy. "If she's clean, she'll prove it. Until then, protect yourself." Ryan stared down at the swirling liquor, a pit in his stomach. He had exiled his pregnant wife, but the real tragedy was that a part of him still loved her. A part of him hoped that in forcing her out, he might discover if she truly cared for him, or the Stockbridge name. Much of Vivian's life was defined by perseverance. She was not born into wealth. Her mother ran a small bakery in Queens, scraping by to send Vivian to Catholic school, while her father spent his days as a technician for a local cable company. Her adolescence was filled with chores, part-time jobs, and unwavering ambition. She wanted to become someone who changed the world, her mother's unfulfilled dream. She earned scholarships for undergrad, then a spot at Columbia Law School. There she thrived, becoming fascinated with corporate law and startup culture. During a summer internship at a prominent law firm, she was assigned to a case that involved the Stockbridge family's philanthropic arm. She encountered Ryan Stockbridge, who had come to speak about a new education initiative. He was dashing, magnetic even. Their first conversation hovered between flirting and intellectual sparring, each one determined to outdo the other. They dated in secret for a while. Ryan insisted on privacy because his father was notoriously critical of his romantic involvements. In those early days, they bonded over big dreams. Vivian spoke passionately about wanting to start her own philanthropic organization for women in STEM. Ryan mused about new frontiers in technology. They laughed over coffee-shared late-night walks in Central Park and discovered an electric spark between them that made the city glow. When Harvey found out, he predictably disapproved. Yet something in Ryan refused to bow to his father's wishes. He proposed to Vivian in a small private ceremony at a rooftop garden, offering her a ring that once belonged to his late mother. Vivian thought it was a gesture of true love, an alliance against the cynicism of old money. She said yes, wholeheartedly. Their wedding was a quiet affair, performed at a private chapel in Italy. No tabloids, no lavish receptions, just a small gathering of close friends. It seemed perfect. But afterward, returning to New York was like stepping into a storm. Harvey's manipulative undertones wove through the staff and social circles. Rumors about Vivian being an opportunist, a cunning lawyer seeking a big score, circulated behind her back. Slowly, the isolation chipped away at the newlywed bliss. Vivian tried to remain resolute. She found respite in her own modest law practice, which primarily served underprivileged clients, ensuring they got fair settlements. The Stockbridge name brought her plenty of invitations to galas and charity dinners, yet each event was a harsh reminder she wasn't accepted. People looked at her suspiciously, waiting for her to slip up. Soon she discovered she was pregnant, a joyous surprise. She told Ryan in private, expecting him to light up with excitement. He was elated for a moment, but immediately the weight of his father's interference weighed on him. Harvey demanded paternity tests, insinuating the baby might not be Ryan's. Vivian was crushed. Though Ryan didn't believe such accusations, the doubt lingered in his eyes as well. By the time she was in her second trimester, their conversations felt stilted, forced. Intimacy had been replaced by disclaimers, lawyers, and the father's dominating presence. In her darkest moments, Vivian confided in an old friend from law school, Cynthia Rhodes, who'd left the legal field to start an investment advisory firm. Cynthia had a razor-sharp mind for finance and an empathy that made her a trusted confidant. She introduced Vivian to a group of female entrepreneurs, investors, biotech specialists, digital innovators, women determined to reshape industries. They saw in Vivian a steadfast ally who could navigate the legal labyrinth to make their dreams come true. And so in secret, Vivian began forging alliances and business deals. She never intended betrayal, only independence. Little did she know how drastically it would all be misread, and how quickly Ryan's insecurities would be lit aflame by Harvey's unwavering cynicism. Ryan was haunted by the memory of his mother, Celeste. She had been his only source of genuine affection in a household otherwise ruled by profit and status. She taught him kindness amidst opulence, to see people for who they were rather than for their net worth. But when she passed, Ryan became prone to second-guessing. His father's approach to life trust, no one love, is a liability gradually crept into Ryan's psyche. Marrying Vivian had been an act of defiance against that worldview. Yet ironically, the seeds of paranoia his father planted were beginning to sprout. In the weeks leading to that fateful night of banishing Vivian, Ryan unearthed a series of unusual transactions. His personal accounts showed small but regular withdrawals by Vivian. They were not large enough to raise official alarm, but noticeable to a man like Ryan. Security footage captured her meeting with bankers from Goldman Sachs, and her phone logs included calls to a hedge fund manager rumored to be an enemy of the Stockbridge empire. She even attended an event featuring Elon Musk's latest venture in space tourism, though she told Ryan she was simply meeting an old classmate there. Perhaps she was simply exploring investment opportunities, but from Ryan's vantage point, it felt secretive. Then, after an argument where Vivian demanded more autonomy, more respect, and more control over her finances, Ryan froze. He had promised her a partnership, yet the more money she commanded, the further she drifted from him. When he questioned her about her legal associates, she deflected. When he pressed her on specifics, she insisted she couldn't divulge details due to client confidentiality. The final straw came when Ryan discovered legal documents discussing an exit plan and financial partition words that conjured images of divorce and monstrous settlements. Consumed by fear and under the steady drumbeat of Harvey's warnings, Ryan signed a set of orders placing house security on alert. Later that day, he told them to bar Vivian until further notice. It was a momentary panic, something he assumed would blow over once they cleared the air. But it escalated into the spectacle that left her standing alone in the driveway, suitcase at hand, banished from her own home. In the aftermath, Ryan's heart lurched with guilt. As he paced the penthouse study, he remembered seeing the pregnancy test, hearing her breathless excitement at the news. What had he done? He had turned into the one thing he swore never to be his father's loyal disciple. Vivian refused to let despair consume her. That same night, after turning away from the mansion, she checked into a discreet boutique hotel in Midtown. Once inside her modest suite, she sank onto the bed, tears finally breaching the dam she'd built up. She was frightened, betrayed, but also resolute. She gently placed her hand on her belly and whispered to the child, "I'll protect you. I promise." Seconds later, her phone rang. It was Cynthia. I heard Cynthia said voice tight with concern. "Rumors are swirling already, Viv. Are you all right?" Vivian inhaled, trying to steady herself. "I'll be fine. I just need some rest." Then we move forward. "Have you spoken to Ms. Alderman?" "Yes," Cynthia replied. "She's excited. With your endorsement, her biotech venture is ready to go public. This will be massive. Every major investor is on board." Vivian pulled up the ultrasound photo again, the flicker of determination returning to her eyes. "Then let's finalize it. No more waiting. My child's future depends on me building something indestructible. Let's show them what we're made of." That night, a clandestine meeting took place over encrypted video calls. Vivian, Cynthia, and a handful of female entrepreneurs convened. They discussed the final details of an unprecedented initial public offering, IPO, for a biotech firm focusing on regenerative medicine, a cutting-edge field that had the potential to transform healthcare. The founder, Dr. Naomi Alderman, was a Nobel Prize-nominated researcher. She'd developed a groundbreaking therapy that could expedite tissue regeneration in burn victims among other applications. Major pharmaceutical giants were sniffing around to either buy out her research or crush her. But with Vivian's legal acumen and Cynthia's finance wizardry, they had crafted a strategy for Dr. Alderman to go public independently and secure funds for large-scale clinical trials. For months, the group had worked in secret, fearful that if the Stockbridges caught wind of it, they might stifle the project or overshadow the credit. Vivian was critical to bridging Dr. Alderman's science with the right corporate structure, especially in a ruthless market environment. Tonight, they set the final puzzle pieces in place. By dawn, the biotech firm Alderman Innovations would unveil its upcoming IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. Unknown to Ryan, the hush-hush documents he glimpsed were tied not to a divorce or scheme, but to a groundbreaking business venture. Exit plan referred to strategic approaches for the company's key stakeholders. Financial partition referred to how the founder's equity would be divided in the event of further expansions. It was a typical legal procedure, but from Ryan's vantage, it looked like the blueprint of a cunning gold digger. Unbeknownst to him, it was the blueprint of something that would rock Wall Street. That same night, while Vivian was barred from her home, she signed the final documents. In the quiet hum of her hotel room, with an unwavering heart, she placed her electronic signature on a digital contract that would forever alter the financial landscape and her destiny. Morning arrived with a whirlwind in Manhattan. Major financial news platforms, Bloomberg, CNBC, the Wall Street Journal buzzed with an unexpected announcement. Alderman Innovations, a previously under-the-radar biotech firm, had scheduled its IPO. Even more shocking was the reveal that Vivian Stockbridge, wife to one of the richest financiers in the city, was a principal investor and legal architect behind the company. Wall Street had been accustomed to seeing the Stockbridge name headlining major deals, but never this way. Typically, it was Ryan or Harvey unveiling new acquisitions. Now the name Vivian Stockbridge was splashed across financial bulletins, praising her as a champion of female-led innovation. The story was irresistible. A rising biotech star, backed by a quiet band of women entrepreneurs, ready to challenge the big pharmaceutical players. Overnight, Vivian became a symbol of disruptive growth. Reporters scrambled to confirm the details. Cynthia Rhodes, stepping forward as the official spokesperson, outlined how Alderman Innovations possessed patents so revolutionary that major hedge funds had been clamoring for a piece. She teased that the company's technology was so cutting-edge that it had potential to become the next Moderna or BioNTech, a household name with a multi-billion-dollar valuation. Ryan woke that morning to a tidal wave of calls. His personal assistant, Veronica, hammered on the penthouse door, phone in hand. "Sir, you need to see the news right now." Bleary-eyed Ryan flicked on a financial channel and nearly dropped his coffee mug. The anchor was discussing the upcoming IPO, emphasizing Vivian Stockbridge's critical role and praising her business genius in forging an alliance of top-flight investors. His mind spun in circles. So that's what she's been doing. A surge of conflicting emotions hit him relief that she wasn't scheming to divorce him for a payout fury, that she'd hidden such a monumental project from him, and oddly a flicker of pride that the woman he loved had orchestrated something so impressive. Yet overshadowing it all was the realization that the entire city now viewed her as a rising financial star in her own right, one who apparently needed no help from the Stockbridge empire. Harvey, on the other hand, was livid. He stormed into Ryan's penthouse, ignoring the doorman's protests. "You see what she's done? She's made you look like a fool. You ban her, and on the same night, she launches something that's overshadowing everything we've built. Ryan stared at the TV screens, flashing Vivian's name in bright letters. She's brilliant, he muttered, half in awe, half in despair. Don't glorify her, Harvey snapped. You realize how this looks for us. Our investors will question our unity. They'll think the Stockbridge brand is fracturing, that we can't even manage our own household. And maybe we can't, Ryan admitted. Voice hollow. This is all my fault. At that, Harvey's brow furrowed. The old man had never seen his son so defeated. But decades of living in a cutthroat world had left Harvey numb to guilt. If you won't fight back, I will. I'm calling an emergency meeting of our board to figure out how to manage this. Vivian might have done this for altruistic reasons, but I suspect she's playing a bigger game, maybe positioning herself to overshadow you. I won't let that happen. Ryan wanted to protest, but words failed him. A swirl of regret suffocated his thoughts. He remembered the night before, the echo of that gate slamming behind Vivian, the heartbreak in her eyes. What have I done, was the question echoing in his mind. Now she was out there forging her destiny without him, and it stung more than any corporate defeat ever could. By lunchtime, the Stockbridge mansion became the epicenter of frantic strategizing. Harvey rallied top lawyers, PR strategists, and financial advisors. The message was clear: the Stockbridge brand must not appear fractured. They had to control the narrative or risk losing billions in investor confidence. If word leaked that Ryan had banished his pregnant wife, the tabloids would have a field day. For once, Harvey and Ryan agreed on a single point: the scandal needed to be managed. Ryan felt torn apart. He hated the idea of attacking Vivian or discrediting her, yet the family's public relations gurus insisted on a statement that recast Vivian as a supportive partner in the family empire, someone acting with the full blessing of her husband. Ryan recognized the spin. It minimized her independence, swallowing her achievements into the Stockbridge narrative. It was classic corporate posturing. Simultaneously, the board explored whether they could quietly invest in Alderman Innovations. If we can't beat them, we'll join them, some members quipped. Harvey, however, was vehemently against it. We don't play second fiddle, he roared. If anyone is going to revolutionize biotech under the Stockbridge name, it should be us. In the midst of the chaos, Ryan slipped away to a quiet office at the mansion, ignoring the stream of phone calls and messages. He needed a moment to think, or perhaps to feel. He dug into a drawer and found a small box containing mementos of his time with Vivian. Their wedding photos in Italy, the pressed flower she'd given him on their first date, a letter she wrote promising to stand by him no matter how wild the storms. Staring at her handwriting, a wave of sorrow engulfed him. He recalled all the times she'd tried to speak to him about her ambitions, her desire to do something meaningful beyond being Mrs. Stockbridge. He'd nodded politely, but never fully grasped how passionate she was. Rather than show interest, he'd let his father's suspicions drown out her voice. Now she had soared on her own under the city's spotlight. And I'm here, rummaging through old memories, he thought bitterly. She deserved better than me. His phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Ryan, if you care about your wife, let her tell her story. Don't twist the narrative. This is Cynthia Rhodes. Let her be who she is. Ryan's hands trembled. He remembered Cynthia, the friend and investment advisor. When they were first introduced, He found her to be sharp and unyielding, someone who rarely bent to intimidation. He couldn't help but feel an odd sense of gratitude that Vivian had such a friend, someone who would stand up for her in a moment like this. Ryan typed a reply but hesitated. He realized he had nothing to say that could undo the damage. Another wave of shame rolled over him. With a resigned sigh, he rose from the chair, bracing himself to face the board, the father he once idolized, and the unstoppable wave of consequences he had set in motion. Outside the grand doors of the Stockbridge estate, a swarm of paparazzi had gathered, jostling for any photo, any comment. Rumors were exploding on social media, #Vivian. Stockbridge was trending on Twitter, with users speculating about a secret power couple clash. Some alleged that she was divorcing Ryan. Others claimed the entire biotech IPO was part of a grand plan to overshadow her husband's empire. Conspiracy theories blossomed like weeds in a neglected garden. Inside the PR war room, phones buzzed ceaselessly. In times past, the Stockbridges would release a simple, measured statement, and the world would accept it. But this was different. Vivian had become a sensation in her own right, apart from the Stockbridge name. Finally, they drafted a formal press release. It read, "The Stockbridge family fully supports the innovative endeavors of Alderman Innovations and applauds Vivian Stockbridge for her dedication to groundbreaking technologies. We look forward to exploring potential synergies with our family foundation and congratulate her for bringing vital solutions to global markets." Harvey bristled reading it. It sounded too conciliatory for his liking. But legal counsel insisted that attacking Vivian would backfire. The statement was released by mid-afternoon, leading to a flurry of headlines. Stockbridge congratulates wife's venture. Family stays united in face of IPO. Surprise. Behind the scenes, speculation raged about the real story. Was this truly a sign of support or a desperate bid for damage control? Meanwhile, a few blocks away, Vivian stepped out of a black SUV at the headquarters of Alderman Innovations. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. She wore a simple navy maternity dress, a calm smile on her face, her hair pulled back in a low chignon. She exuded poise, even as her heart pounded with anxiety. Standing next to her was Dr. Naomi Alderman, the brilliant scientist, and Cynthia, who discreetly guided them through the press chaos. One journalist yelled, "Mrs. Stockbridge, does your husband endorse this IPO, or is there conflict in the marriage?" Another asked, "Are you still living at the Stockbridge mansion?" Vivian paused, her hand drifting protectively over her belly. She cleared her throat and spoke. "I'm here today to celebrate Alderman Innovations and the transformative research Dr. Alderman has pioneered. We have every intention of bringing life-saving technologies to patients worldwide. I hope everyone will focus on the science and the future rather than my personal matters." Still, the questions rained down, some about Ryan, some about her pregnancy. Vivian held her composure, offering carefully worded responses that neither confirmed nor denied any rumors. Within minutes, security ushered her into the building. Inside, staff members broke into spontaneous applause, buoyed by the news coverage and the historic wave of enthusiasm for their upcoming launch. For the first time, Vivian felt what true partnership and respect could be like, unfiltered by cynicism, not overshadowed by a controlling father-in-law or suspicious husband. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like nothing could touch Alderman Innovations. The media lauded their live demonstration as a biotech triumph. News outlets replayed clips of synthetic tissue healing before stunned regulators. Vivian's speech was quoted across finance blogs and academic journals alike. Phrases like pregnant disruptor and the woman who shook Wall Street flooded social media. Investors flooded Cynthia's inbox. Analysts scrambled to re-evaluate projections. But in the volatile world of high finance, triumph can be terrifyingly fragile. Less than 48 hours later, news broke of a sweeping European Union regulation overhaul targeting clinical biotech firms. The changes were abrupt and strict: more documentation, longer trial requirements, and slower approval pipelines. The ripple effect was immediate. Global biotech stocks began to tumble. Pre-IPO valuations for even established players saw sudden drops, and Alderman Innovations, despite its momentum, was no exception. Inside their modest headquarters, the atmosphere shifted from electric to tense. Phones rang non-stop. Partners who were previously enthusiastic began pulling back, suddenly cautious. Potential investors who had just stood applauding in their demonstration hall now requested meetings to reassess terms. Venture firms who had verbally pledged millions hesitated. No contracts had been signed yet. Vivian sat at the edge of the long glass conference table, her hand resting instinctively on her stomach. The glow from the market ticker outside cast flickering shadows on her face. She wasn't panicked yet, but she could feel the momentum stalling. Cynthia entered, a tablet in hand, and tension in her jaw. We've had 4 major funds pause negotiations. They want to wait until the EU clarifies its language. Some are demanding clauses that would cut our valuation in half. Naomi Alderman stood at the whiteboard, rubbing out projections she had written only days ago. This regulation isn't even relevant to our first 2 markets, but the psychology of it, these investors smell weakness. Vivian nodded slowly. Fear spreads faster than facts. She looked around the room at the circle of women who had fought for months to build something revolutionary. This wasn't just about money. It was about momentum, about making the market believe in them. And right now, doubt was seeping in like water through a cracked foundation. We need to respond immediately. And publicly, Vivian said, sitting upright. Not just to our investors. This needs to be a market-facing declaration. We reinforce trust by doubling down on transparency. Cynthia raised an eyebrow. You're thinking a press event? More than that, Vivian replied. We invite regulators, scientists, journalists, another showcase. This time, we don't just demonstrate, we prove our resilience. Dr. Alderman hesitated. What if they don't show? Vivian's voice didn't waver. They will, because they want to believe in something right now, and we'll give them every reason to. Across the city, Ryan watched the headlines unfold from his penthouse. Alderman's IPO, once a surefire success, now had a question mark beside it. News anchors speculated if Vivian's rise was too good to be true. He hated that, not because it reflected poorly on him, but because he knew how hard she had worked for this. He had witnessed the layers of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the boardroom meetings she took with swollen ankles, the quiet heartbreak she endured without ever letting it derail her mission. He knew this wasn't about headlines for her, it was about legacy. And now the world was trying to shake her foundation. He paced, torn. He still had connections, ones that could help. Over the years, he'd built quiet but influential relationships with biotech regulators in DC and Europe. One call could cut through red tape. One email could bring credibility back into Vivian's corner. But would she want his help? Ryan looked down at a message on his phone. It was from one of those old regulatory contacts. Is Alderman's science real? Should we bother attending this second event? Ryan stared at the screen. Then he replied, yes, it's real, and so is she. He didn't sign his name. He didn't need to. That night he made 6 discreet calls, to allies, to former colleagues, to quiet, powerful people who owed him favors, not as a Stockbridge heir, not as an investor, but as a man trying to undo a fracture he had caused. He didn't tell Vivian. He didn't want credit. He only wanted the world to see what he had seen too late, a woman who wouldn't fold under pressure, a woman who didn't just belong in the arena, she commanded it. Back at Alderman's office, Vivian watched the sun dip below the skyline. She had just finished rewriting her pitch for the second demonstration. Every word had been sharpened, every claim backed by citations, every number verified. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, but her resolve unshakable. She pressed a hand to her belly and whispered, they won't stop us. Not now, not ever. Because this wasn't just about a company anymore. This was about proving that strength doesn't always roar. It sometimes walks into the storm pregnant and uninvited and dares the world to underestimate it again. The day of the live demonstration had arrived, and with it came a current of anticipation that swept across Manhattan like a brewing storm. The conference center in the heart of the financial district had been transformed into a gleaming stage for alderman innovations. A biotech firm no one had heard of 6 months ago, now hailed as the future of regenerative medicine. Inside the venue, the air crackled with energy. Investors, scientists, government regulators, and media figures packed into the auditorium. Each guest had received a personalized invitation, Cynthia's way of signaling exclusivity. And it worked. Even skeptics known for publicly dismissing small biotech startups had shown up in tailored suits with guarded curiosity. Behind the stage, Vivian sat in the green room, nerves gnawing at her. At nearly 7 months pregnant, the weight of both her child and the moment settled heavily on her body. Her hands rested on her belly, steadying herself. Her face was pale, but composed, her lips rehearsing the words of her speech for the 100th time. She had walked through betrayal, exile, and humiliation. Now all eyes would be on whether she could deliver not just hope, but proof. Cynthia peeked through the curtain and turned to Vivian. The room's full. We've got reps from the FDA, the World Health Organization, Goldman Sachs, even a few delegates from the European Medical Council. Vivian forced a tight smile. Good. Let them see us. Let them see this. And your husband, Cynthia asked softly. Vivian hesitated. He's not invited. But I wouldn't be surprised if he found his way in. Cynthia nodded. Just remember, Viv, you earned this stage. Every second of it. With that, the two women walked toward the wings of the stage. The lights dimmed. A hush fell. Cynthia stepped forward to open the event. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice calm and commanding. Welcome to the beginning of a new era in regenerative medicine. Today we don't ask for your belief, we show you why it's deserved. Applause rippled through the room. Then came Dr. Naomi Alderman, flanked by 2 lab technicians. She dived into the science, her tone passionate but precise. She spoke of damaged tissue immune responses and the body's ability to heal if only science could catch up. Behind her, a giant screen lit up with footage from clinical trials. Then came the live demonstration. Technicians rolled out a sterile glass unit containing synthetic muscle tissue. In real time, Alderman's team applied a sample of their regenerative therapy. As a high-resolution camera zoomed in, the crowd watched the cells begin to fuse, accelerated healing taking place before their eyes. A stunned silence followed. Then gasps, then murmurs. One of the regulators stood up to get a closer look. After several minutes, Alderman stepped back and said simply, "This is not a simulation. It's a live demonstration of our technology already undergoing human trials." The room erupted in applause. When it finally died down, Cynthia introduced the next speaker, Vivian Stockbridge, lead legal architect and strategic advisor to Alderman Innovations. Vivian stepped into the spotlight. Gone was the nervous woman from the green room. Here stood someone radiant with quiet authority. She began slowly grounding her audience in the realities of startup financing and regulatory pressure, then pivoted to the broader picture. This technology, she said, doesn't just represent a breakthrough in medicine. It represents a shift in how innovation can thrive when built on collaboration, equity, and ethical leadership. The Alderman team is ready for market scaling, protected by 6 global patents and backed by diverse private funding. We are not here to sell a fantasy. We are here to lead a transformation. She paused, letting the words settle. I was told I didn't belong in boardrooms, that I didn't understand the game, that my voice didn't matter unless it echoed a legacy name. But today, I'm not asking for permission. Today, I'm part of something that speaks for itself. The crowd rose to their feet. A standing ovation rang out, echoing across the conference center. From the side of the room, hidden just beyond the spotlight, Ryan Stockbridge watched with awe. He had slipped in unnoticed, escorted by a discreet security team. He wasn't there to grandstand or make a scene. He had come to see her. And as he stood there watching Vivian hold the room in the palm of her hand, something inside him cracked, something long buried beneath layers of ego and indoctrination. He wasn't just witnessing a presentation. He was watching the woman he loved become the woman he had never truly seen. After the event, as guests swarmed the stage, regulators lining up to shake hands and investors pledging millions in support, Vivian quietly stepped off to the side, needing air. The emotional weight of it all had begun to settle into her bones. Then she felt a familiar presence. She turned. Ryan stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes shining not with corporate pride, but something raw regret, admiration, maybe even love. "Vivian," he said softly, "you were extraordinary." She blinked. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I had to come. Not to fix anything, just to see you shine, and to say I'm sorry." She folded her arms, still guarded. "Sorry doesn't change what happened." "I know," he repeated. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know I made some calls. Quietly. To regulatory officials. I never claimed credit, and I won't. I just wanted to help. Not as a Stockbridge. As the father of your child." Vivian's walls trembled. He looked at her more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. "You don't owe me anything. But if there's still a chance, even a small one, I'll do the work. I'll earn it. Not with words, with actions." She stared at him for a long moment, the hum of voices fading behind her. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about what kind of life our child is born into. And if you want to be part of that, it has to be on my terms. No shadows, no doubts." "I'll follow your lead," he said, voice steady. "Just give me the chance." Vivian didn't answer, not with words. Instead, She reached out and took his hand. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation, but it was something, a beginning. And as the stock ticker continued to climb on the building screens outside, the world began to see what she had always known deep down. She didn't need the Stockbridge name to rise. But it was time the Stockbridges learned what it meant to stand beside someone who could soar. The days after the demonstration moved with a surreal velocity. Alderman Innovations was no longer just a promising name in biotech. It was now the center of every conversation on Wall Street. Pre-IPO valuations had doubled. Financial publications hailed the demonstration as one of the most impressive in a decade. The woman who had once been known only as Mrs. Stockbridge was now hailed as the visionary leading a movement. Vivian tried to keep herself grounded in the work. She emphasized team achievements, highlighting Dr. Alderman's breakthrough research and Cynthia's relentless financial coordination. But the headlines refused to let her blend into the background. The media had crowned her with a new title, the pregnant powerhouse of Wall Street. Back at the Stockbridge estate, Harvey fumed. The success of Alderman Innovations wasn't just unexpected, it was infuriating. He had banked on her failure, even encouraged Ryan to exile her based on a toxic cocktail of suspicion and control. And now Vivian was outshining every recent Stockbridge initiative. Investors were whispering. Board members were asking questions. "She's humiliating us," Harvey roared during a tense meeting. "I built this empire from the ground up, and now my own daughter-in-law, my disgrace of a daughter-in-law, is stealing the spotlight." Ryan sat quietly at the far end of the room. He'd been quiet a lot lately, watching, thinking, unraveling the lies he had once mistaken for protection. Harvey's voice thundered again, demanding action. "Do something, Ryan. Release a statement. Publicly distance the Stockbridge name. Make it clear she doesn't speak for this family." But something in Ryan broke. "No," he said, his voice low but firm. Harvey blinked. "What did you just say?" "I said no," Ryan repeated, rising from his chair. "Vivian hasn't humiliated us. She's simply shown what she's capable of. Something I should have recognized long before you poisoned my view of her." Harvey's face turned a shade redder. "You think you can defend her and survive in this business? You'll regret crossing me. You're nothing without my name." Ryan let out a slow breath. "Maybe, but I'm done being your puppet." He crossed the room, grabbed his jacket, and paused at the doorway. "I chose wrong once, Dad. I won't make that mistake again. I banished my wife because of your paranoia. I broke her trust because I let you define what loyalty meant. But now I choose her. I choose my child. And I choose a future that doesn't revolve around fear." Then he walked out, leaving behind not just the room, but a legacy of control that had stifled him for too long. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan Stockbridge made a decision, not as a son of an emperor, but as a man trying to repair what he had shattered. The morning dawned bright and golden over the skyline of Manhattan, casting a warm glow over Wall Street. For most, it was just another trading day. But for Vivian Stockbridge, it marked the beginning of something far greater: vindication, rebirth, and power reclaimed. Outside the New York Stock Exchange, a buzz of anticipation filled the air. Crowds gathered as camera crews jockeyed for position. News anchors rehearsed their scripts, and a banner unfurled across the facade of the building: Alderman Innovations IPO, pioneering the future of regenerative medicine. Among the figures arriving through the grand columns of the exchange, Vivian moved with a composed grace. dressed in a tailored, deep emerald maternity gown that draped elegantly over her baby bump. She exuded poise and calm. Her hands rested lightly on her belly, both protective and proud. At 7 months pregnant, she looked radiant, and for the first time in weeks, she felt truly at peace. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Reporters snapped photos. Tech analysts whispered in corners. A large LED screen above the trading floor displayed the opening price of Alderman Innovations stock. On stage stood Dr. Naomi Alderman, radiant with nervous energy, and Cynthia Rhodes, flanked by a boardroom of women who had spent months grinding in secret for this very moment. Vivian stood beside them quietly, soaking it all in. When the bell rang, confetti burst into the air. A roar filled the room as the first stock price appeared, $38.65, up nearly 40% from the projected range. Within minutes, the ticker climbed higher and higher. The company was a hit. No, it was a phenomenon. The day that Ryan and Harvey had once ruled as their exclusive domain now belonged to her. Financial analysts were already scrambling to update projections. Some compared Alderman Innovations to the early days of Moderna. Others called it the dawn of a new biotech frontier. But none of the headlines mattered more to Vivian than the one flashing across Times Square: Vivian Stockbridge co-leads biotech breakout Wall Street's Wahoo powerhouse. In the swirl of celebration, Vivian noticed a familiar figure lingering in the back, partially hidden near the edge of the trading floor. Ryan. Their eyes met. He looked humbled. Smaller than she remembered, not in stature, but in presence. His tailored suit couldn't mask the regret etched into his face. Slowly, cautiously, she made her way to him. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. "I had to come," he replied. "To see you. To see this, what you've built. I don't expect you to forget what I did, or forgive it. But I needed to tell you, Vivian. I am so proud of you." His voice broke on the last words. Vivian's breath caught. The applause, the flashing lights, the power, all of it fell away in that moment. What remained was the ache of a wound still healing. "You hurt me, Ryan. Deeply. You left me when I needed you the most," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you're here now, and I see it in your eyes. You've changed." "I want to be better," he said quickly. "Not for the empire, not for my father. For you, and our child. I don't care about the power or the press. I care about earning your trust back." Vivian studied him, her heart wavering between pain and possibility. "This isn't about just saying the right words anymore," she replied, steady but kind. "It's about doing the right things. If you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to walk beside me, not in front of me, not behind me." Ryan nodded. "I'm ready. I'll earn it. Day by day. No more ego, no more pride." Vivian reached for his hand and held it gently. She didn't promise anything. Not yet. But in that moment, she didn't pull away either. They stood side by side, a pregnant mother and a repentant husband, under the glow of the LED tickers. Around them, Alderman Innovations continued to soar its stock, now surpassing $50 per share. Cheers rose once more from the trading floor. Photographers captured the moment from across the room. Vivian's presence was magnetic. A woman once cast out, now celebrated. A mother once doubted, now elevated. And a name, once hidden behind a billionaire's shadow, now burning bright in her own right. A new dawn had arrived, not just for biotech, not just for the markets, but for Vivian Stockbridge. And this time, it was hers. A brilliant mind, a daring dream, and a woman who turned her heartbreak into the catalyst for a biotech revolution that is Vivian Stockbridge's story. Banned from her own home at her most vulnerable moment, she channeled her pain into one of the most remarkable IPOs in recent Wall Street history. Along the way, she taught her husband the true meaning of trust, shattering generations of cynicism. Her journey reminds us that even in the darkest of times, opportunity awaits those brave enough to seize it. If you were moved by Vivian's triumph, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends who need inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that prove resilience is stronger than any barrier. By joining our community, you help spread messages of hope and empowerment around the globe. Together, let's celebrate stories that spark change.